Hey guys, it's Finch. What's up? We got another vlog today. We're between a McDonald's and a Target, so that's when you know we got some really high-tech shit going on. But anyway, I just wanted to go into a bit more detail on the bans of Magearna and Cinderace and just give you guys a little update because it seems like a lot of you guys are interested in my whereabouts and what's going on right now. It's a pretty interesting situation to say the least. So I guess first we'll just brief on what's going to go on with the channel. So I have a scheduled upload for the Pokemon Platinum randomizer Nuzlocke today. It right now is scheduled to go up at 11:30, but since this is probably gonna be a morning vlog, I'm probably gonna move it to like the mid-afternoon, like 2:30, 3 p.m. I'm thinking. And because of that, that's gonna give us 2 uploads today and yesterday, despite having access to no power whatsoever. I'm also gonna be at my dad's office later, so hopefully I could maybe get some OLT laddering in, save the replays, and just upload the replays once I get power, and basically just narrate over them. So I hope that's okay with you guys for the first couple parts of the OLT laddering. Definitely don't want to skimp out on the details for y'all, but basically we might not get power back until either the it could be tomorrow, Friday, or even Saturday this weekend, but it could also not be all the way until the 11th. That's what they're warning us about. And if it's not until the 11th, well, I'm gonna go like full man-child hissy fit because I have 17 tournament games to play, and that's just, a bit unfortunate. I was kind of hoping to do a marathon day on Saturday or Sunday now that I had to push a lot of them back, but I'm going to play a game or two on phone later today for some tournaments that I can't push back, and we'll see what we can do, but I'll work on that. That's a Josh problem. That's a me problem, not a you guys problem. But anyway, that aside, so there's also the fact that the uploading, I can't really upload every single day if I don't have power. I'm going to try and do a couple more vlogs because it seems like A, the first one got a ton of views, and B, it's almost kind of a funny concept in that I'm going out of my way to like just upload these videos for the sake of just staying in touch with you guys, and it seems like a lot of you appreciate it, so I figure why the hell not. But anyway, you guys don't really want to hear about the whole saga of Finchinator's power. No. You guys want to hear about Pokemon. And so if you're still watching at the 2-minute and 15-minute mark, I'm going to go into a bit more detail on the potential impacts of a Magearna ban and a Cinderace ban. So first off, with regards to Magearna gone, we touched on it in the Metagame Monday, but I think it's going to be kind of good in terms of team building, like restrictions being lifted, because we're no longer really forced to use very durable Flare Cannon resists, and on top of that, Flash Cannon resistance. You saw how well Flash Cannon did in the World Cup game I uploaded on Monday morning as well, so it shouldn't really be a shocker to anyone that just having something with 130 special attack, strong stabs ×2, and the ability to run Trick and Volt Switch, with also just, oh my god, is someone honking their horn? Really? Can you guys stop being so obnoxious? I'm just trying to chill the hell out. Anyway, that aside, so obviously that being gone from the metagame right now is just going to be a huge weight off our shoulders. For example, things like Toxapex, which are able to resist Flare Cannon, it's not going to be doing over like 35-40%, and Flash Cannon take that with ease, not even be 3 KO. That's amazing. There's like cars struggling to get into a drive-thru right there. It's like a big-ass truck. Anyway, that aside, so that's cool, but also on top of that, it's also the fact that there's just a lot of good things going on right now for other Pokemon. For example, without Magearna being in the tier, there's a lot more room for Slowbro to function, because every time Slowbro got in, it had to click Slack off because of, say, a U-turn from Cinderace or whatever, or a Gunk Shot for Cinderace. All of a sudden, Magearna comes in, and it's threatening to one-shot it, so and you're forced out, and that's your bulky water. So either you use Slowbro with Amoonguss, or who knows, you might just be shit out of luck, honestly. And that happened to a lot of teams recently. I mean, my World Cup uploads from last week highlighted that really nicely. And that's kind of why I went through this series of games I did. And I really wanted to highlight that. And I think that was kind of like noticed by a lot of the people who voted as well. I'm not saying that rubbed off my videos rubbed off on them, but rather they experienced the tier in a similar way to the way I did. And I think that the fact of the matter is that the limited pool of counterplay to Magearna is now, well, obviously it's still limited because it got banned, like people recognize that, but now that pool of counterplay isn't emphasized as much in team building. So there's less need to throw on, especially a defensive Toxapex or an Amoonguss, to every single team. You don't need to use those durable Flare Cannon resists. And on top of that, you also don't need as much of a durable Steel resist, because nothing else is really using Steel attacks as much right now. So, Excadrill, but you could check Excadrill with a Powdon or Slowbro, which isn't going to be a Magearna Flash Cannon check because, well, Magearna can nuke it with Flare Cannon and Volt Switch and so on and so forth. That car went by pretty quickly for a parking lot, buddy. But anyway, So yeah, there's just a lot of more freedom. I think Slowbro is going to increase in usage quite a bit. I also think we're going to see more Tangrowth. Why these Pokemon in particular? Well, the first thing is that Magearna just shredded both of them offensively, which is a big thing because you don't want to use these Pokemon that are super fast against Magearna, especially since Mandibuzz is already so common and oftentimes necessitates that one slot where you can kind of be okay saying, okay, I'm fine being fast against Magearna with this one slot. But that still can be exploited. But another big thing is the fact that these Pokemon were in direct competition with the aforementioned Flare Cannon resists in Toxapex and Amoonguss. And now that they don't face that competition, i.e. Toxapex versus Slowbro or Amoonguss versus Tangrowth, now there's more reason to try those alternatives out. And I think they're going to open up entirely different alleys for team building. And that's where I think that metagame evolution is really interesting, because we're seeing, new Pokemon flourish. We're seeing new Pokemon thrive, and what these new Pokemon do is they bring out pathways for other new Pokemon to come out. So for example, there's a very cookie cutter way of building balance teams, and if you saw my World Cup video, then you'll know what I meant. My World Cup team building video, because I had Mandibuzz on virtually every team, and Clefable on a lot of well with one of those poison types, be it Toxapex or Amoonguss, more likely than not Toxapex, and so on and so forth. And I really didn't use any Tangrowth. I had a couple of Ferrothorn, but yeah, no, it was a really limited dynamic. And honestly, I view that as unhealthy for the tier. And I think that makes a tier that has so much potential to be exciting and fresh and new to everyone actually really stagnant and stale right off the bat. And I think that's the exact opposite of what we wanted to promote. So therefore, banning Magearna was, in my eyes, a godsend and one of the best things for the metagame. And I think that over time, people started to realize that the spec set was just far too much. It was ridiculous. And the ways and the length in which you had to go out of your way in team building to try and counteract it was just really, really a bit too much in my eyes. So yeah. Anyway, that aside, I also want to talk about Cinderace, of course. And Cinderace in the metagame was a bit more of a sudden ban. So I keep trying to change camera angles just so it doesn't look like I'm like I don't know how to say it. I don't want to look like I'm like trying to take video of people in the parking lot, because obviously I'm not just trying to get like vlog background, because, well, yeah, but there's no one really standing in the parking lot right now. It's 9 a.m. on a Thursday morning. It's just people in line at the drive-thru at McDonald's because they can't bake breakfast at their own households because, well, power's out. So yeah. But anyway, I'm actually here because I got to get candles at Target, so I'm going to go on right after this. But that aside, where was I? Oh yeah, Cinderace. So Cinderace, the thing with Cinderace is a lot fewer people were expecting the ban. A lot of people thought it was broken, though. The survey for the World Cup Pokemon had nearly 80%, over 75%, saying they wanted to ban. In fact, they got even more support than Magearna, which honestly didn't surprise me. If you want my honest opinion, I think Cinderace was more broken than Magearna. In fact, I think that Magearna, if it wasn't for the Choice Spec set, wouldn't have been broken at all. It was Choice Specs that truly pushed it over the edge this generation, believe it or not. And it's pretty funny considering Choice Specs Magearna was not a thing last generation. So I think it's funny how different generations interact differently with different Pokemon. But going beyond that, I also believe that the fact of the matter is that Cinderace had an even smaller pool of counterplay. And it's weird because it's easy to slap on a Hippowdon or a Baneful Bunker Toxapex. It's just like, oh, yeah, it's handled. But the fact of the matter is that that's like super restrictive, because Pex is needed for like the special defensive or not run Baneful Bunker, because it needs to run Haze and Scald and Knock and Toxic and Recover and all these other things. And it just was super, like, I don't want to even say inconvenient, because it was beyond inconvenient. It was also just impractical to try and force that specific like way of counterplay into some teams. So then you're like, you got Hippowdon, you sort of have Rhyperior, although Rhyperior, it couples U-turns away from being, pummeled, not to mention if it runs high jump kick, then forget about it. But in my eyes, the set that actually broke Cinderace was Pyro Ball plus Gunk Shot plus Zen Headbutt plus U-Turn. And that's a set that rose to popularity during roughly the second to third week of the World Cup Pokemon. And basically, what happens is you get a U-Turn off on Hippowdon once or twice. You get a U-Turn off on Slowbro once or twice. You get a U-Turn off on Mandibuzz once or twice. And then all of a sudden, they're chipped into a kill range. And Gunk Shot's going to be doing, 40% to Slowbro if it's adamant, 35 if it's not adamant, and, a bit more to Mandibuzz. And that, coupled with the fact that you're already forced to run like a max physical defense on both of them, which maybe isn't the most convenient. Although on Slowbro, it's probably going to be ran regardless for Excadrill. But with that said, couple that with the fact that Cinderace isn't really going to be one-shot by either of these, and you got a 30% chance to poison either of them. And in my opinion, it becomes a lot less of a tolerable dynamic for the people trying to play against Cinderace. In fact, in my personal opinion, Cinderace is really hard to keep in containment, even if you have one or two checks to it. For example, in World Cup, I faced a team with Slowbro plus Rotom Heat plus Urshifu with priority. And despite all of that, I was able to really break the game open with Magearna plus Cinderace. And Cinderace did a lot of that legwork, in my opinion. So I just think it goes without saying that Cinderace is one of the best progress makers. But how do you differentiate one of the best progress makers and a really good Pokemon from a broken one? Well, in my eyes, what made Cinderace broken was the fact that it had access to heavy-duty boots and U-turn, both of which let it come in and out of the game repeatedly without much consequence, especially if you paired it with Teleport or Wish. But I don't even think it was so much support reliant as it was just a support beneficiary, if you will. So because of that, just the context of the metagame, it really was able to come into these games. I mean, in a game that ABR played in World Cup, I remember he used like 16 U-turn PP over the course of the game, and he didn't really support it a ton. He just, smart pivoting, smart and timely pivoting. And Cinderace really isn't a very bulky Pokemon. What makes it as good as it was the fact that it was able to come in and out and in and out and in and out and just chip things down more than they could heal themselves up and make progress. You are becoming the aggressor when using something like Cinderace. You're taking that initiative to try and break through the opponent's team. And in a tier like this, a lot of people are like, oh no, stall. But the fact of the matter is that Cinderace was actually a really good countermeasure to a lot of bulky cores. Because if you get a couple turns right prediction-wise, then you're going to break through them. And that goes a long way in my eyes. Now, I also want to add on to this the fact that Cinderace just does so well against standard cores. Your Zen Headbutt on Toxapex or a Pyro Ball on Amoonguss, plus a couple U-turns in the Mana Buzz away from just absolutely shredding them a lot of the time. Now, there are some drawbacks, such as Pyro Ball missing or Gunk Shot missing, but at the same time, they have similar odds to get the secondary effect, and that could just destroy a team if the Powdon takes a burn or the Man Buzz or Slowbro takes a poison, and so on and so forth. The fact of the matter is that kind of can go both ways. I don't really view it as like a substantial argument. I do think that there were some crucial instances in World Cup, such as the Samkin versus Tamahome game, or really Samkin's games in general, where Gunk Shot missed on a Clefable, and that's like, oh damn, that just screws you over, especially since that happened on turn 1, which was a completely boneheaded play by Tama to stay in. But that aside, I think the fact of the matter is that Cinderace found openings, and Cinderace was great at forcing progress. And yes, there were some checks like a Powdon and Rhyperior, but they got, and even physically defensive Mandos, they got worn out so quickly. And U-turn made it so that Slowbro not only wasn't a counter, but it was a very, very barely a check. And it wasn't even a great one in practice at that. It was more of a thing that could 1v1 it. And given all of this and more, I think Cinderace was actually like the biggest menace to the entire metagame at the time. It was super restrictive, and the reason why we didn't handle it before Magearna was Magearna had been closer to broken from day one, ever since the choice spec set was popularized, which I'd like to take a little bit of credit for because I was the one using it from day one in that Rain team, but also it's just, it getting tricked made it pretty obvious. So I think the metagames players just kind of came up to terms with it, and within like the first week or so, people started using it, and from that get-go, Specs Magearna was just like, gotta go, it's ridiculous. So that was a given from a while now. And Cinderace received a little more support in our survey, but we felt like, for example, Urshifu fell off a little bit after it was broken initially in my eyes, and now it's a lot more manageable. Again, you could say it's broken, but it definitely was not as pressing as either of these two Pokemon. I don't think you could reasonably argue that. And I think people who are probably need to play a bit more. Well, I guess I can't say that because now Cinderace and Magearna are banned, but the survey plus council opinion was pretty unanimous in that we don't need to deal with Urshifu yet. Urshifu, actually, a lot of people believe it's less broken than things like Toxapex. I agree with that, by the way. But that aside, this isn't an Urshifu vlog. No, this is a Cinderace Magearna one. So back to what I was saying, Cinderace is just able to break through teams systematically really well. And the reason we didn't deal with it first was mainly because we wanted to give it more time to see if we could apply something like the Melmetal treatment, which basically is banning it temporarily and then retesting it. And that's what we're doing here. So now we don't even have to go through the entire process of a direct suspect, so we can keep it out of things like OLT and the Stardust Magearna Snake Draft. But on top of that, we're now going to give people an idea of what the metagame is going to be like settled. We're going to let the metagame settle and develop, which is going to give us a better idea on how to deal with things like Toxapex, Urshifu, even Excadrill, because Toxic Excadrill is just so ridiculous if you don't have a Corviknight right now. It's going to be able to cripple things like Slowbro, Hippowdon, Tangrowth, etc. But I don't think it's broken, personally. I've just had a lot of PMs about it. I wouldn't vote ban it, but I'm getting people like PMing me like saying, oh, this might be something to look into in the future, and I totally respect that. In fact, I love when people bring up solid points about things that they think should be broken. What really bothers me, though, is people seeing us go out of our way to ban things like, say, Magearna and Cinderace, like going out of our way to do basically our jobs, and then like right after, like, why wasn't this X ban or Y ban instead? Like, do you expect us to like just pull things out of our asses like that when they clearly aren't justified. Like, things got a specific amount of support in threads and surveys and among council support. Like, every decision a council makes is ridiculously calculated. And like, seeing people comment like, oh, why wasn't this Toxapex? Like, quick banning Toxapex makes no sense. And I'm gonna get into that in a minute, but first, I just want to say, yeah, I think Cinderace was more than justified, and I think it getting removed from the tier is a great benefit, and I'm hoping that it stays banned upon the retest, but I do think that it will also be able to use the time in between now and that retest to really gauge what we feel more and more, and that's also something that I personally am really happy about, as well as using the retest to make that decision as well. Anyway, moving a bit beyond that, I also want to talk about the future of the metagame, the ramifications that these bans have had in the metagame. First things I want to talk about is Toxapex. So the thing with Toxapex is that, in my eyes, both of these bans have actually made it worse. And I alluded to the thing before about the Slowbro versus Toxapex. Now, there's a lot more reasons to use Slowbro, and even that could apply to some other waters as well. But more importantly, the fact of the matter is that Toxapex is going to be a great Pokemon. It's going to be better than Slowbro regardless, but the thing is that now that you don't have to use, now that you're not seeing Magearna and Cinderace as much, A, there's less reason to use Toxapex, and B, because Toxapex is needed for both those Pokemon, but more importantly, B, now there's more room for things like Alakazam, which did not like Magearna or Sucker Punch Cinderace, or even lost 1-1 to Cinderace, or Hydreigon with Nasty Plot, which again faced competition with these two breakers, one of them being fast, one of them being on the special side, or C, something like Rio Nicholas, which was struggling with U-turn Cinderace doing over around half consistently, or potentially Specs Magearna with Trick, just completely neutralizing it. And the fact of the matter is that these Pokemon just can shut down a lot of Toxapexes. Rio Nicholas is going to shut down all Toxapex, especially if it's a good set, i.e. combine sets. On top of that, the Alakazam, yeah, it does mind knockoff, but Pex is not going to be running max special defense still. It's probably going to be running like a mixed defense variant more often than not, and because of that, Psychic's going to be doing 1,000,000 to it. I mean, there's a spread I used to run with 64 physical defense plus rest and special defense to live the Life Orb Psychic when I ran knockoff Pex, and that was able to still stomach 2 Jolly Zen Headbutts usually from Cinderace. So that, spreads like that, maybe you run a bit more special defense than that, even plus special defense, but still, Psychic is easily going to 2-KO even without Life Orb, and Knock is just not the most common move on Pex right now. You see a lot of Baneful Bunker for things like Rillaboom and Zeraora, and so on and so forth, U-turns from Mandibuzz, you know, etc. Admittedly, you might see a bit less Baneful Bunker with the Cinderace ban, but like still, it's a thing. And on top of that, there's also the ability to run Toxic or Toxic Spikes on the Toxapex. So yeah, Knock is not going to be the most common. I wonder if Knockpex is going to surge up though, because Pex does have the adaptability thing going for it. But personally, if Cinderace retest happens and it remains banned, which I think it will, I'm okay with the Toxapex suspect. Admittedly, I want to see more of the metagame. I want to see the metagame settle, but I would be fine with the Toxapex suspect if all else holds in the metagame. I'm actually one of the people that posted about it in the forums. In fact, I'm the only person that really posted about it in the forums. I led that discussion even. And it was a pretty popular post, too. Like, I'm not trying to say the metagame should necessarily not suspect defensive Pokemon. No, I think we should suspect defensive Pokemon if they weren't a suspect. The issue is that nothing defensively was more pressing than Cinderace and Magearna. And you can't tier for the sake of preserving, like, some artificial balance when the fact that matters you could ban more things. So I'm okay with the suspect on Toxapex if Toxapex is out of hand and these balances with Toxapex get out of hand. I'm 100% okay with that. And I think a lot of people in the comments are disregarding that, but I've been very outspoken about that. I included it in my issues with SSU video, made a post about it on the forums just to spark that discussion. No, I'm totally chill with that, and I think you guys got to give me some credit there. But at the same time, I think we also have to give the metagame credit. Okay, we're going to see a lot of things changing, a lot more different offensive Pokemon with Magearna and Cinderace gone. Is that going to make Toxapex as effective? Because Toxapex did well against both those Pokemon, but some of the replacements maybe less so. And because of that, I'm going to say I'm totally chill with the Toxapex suspect in the future if the remainder of the council agrees in the metagame state stands. But you guys also have to accept the fact that the metagame can trend in a fashion that doesn't really favor Toxapex. And just banning offensive Pokemon doesn't necessarily benefit Toxapex if Toxapex beats the offensive Pokemon. That's a really linear way of looking at things when Pokemon has a lot of dominoes falling right now, literally in terms of the bans, but also in terms of metagame things changing over time. And we need to be understanding and accepting of that and see where the metagame goes before we act in too quick of a fashion. Especially with OLT laddering happening right now, I just think it's best to sit back for maybe 1 or 2 weeks and just figure out, okay, where is the metagame going? What is the next thing we need to address? Obviously, we have to retest Cinderace first as well, but after that, it's definitely worth looking into some things. I'm just not sure if and when Toxapex comes into that equation. And I definitely think it's something that's worth discussing, though. I am totally on board with it. Really, I think that Toxapex has been ridiculous this generation, way more than last generation, because there's no things like Gliscor, Magma Storm Heatran, Misty Terrain, you know, Alakazam, and no Mega Alakazam or Megas to overpower it, you know, etc. So a lot of forms of counterplay for Toxapex last generation aren't present this generation. And on top of that, it's really forcing specific status absorbers. Otherwise, it's going to just eventually like chip through your offensive teams and just regenerate out whenever it's forced out. So I view Toxapex as a really restrictive Pokemon in the defensive end. And because of that, I would be fine with a potential suspect or ban of it. But it does take some time for those things to develop, those narratives to form, and people to be okay with that outcome happening. And the fact that it matters is that I can sit here and give my opinion, but I'm not the only person. So if you guys want Toxapex to be suspected or banned, what you should do is log on to the Magearna forums and post in the metagame discussion thread, you know, what you think about Toxapex. And obviously follow the forum rules and restrictions, but there's a way to make a post like that. And I even made one. It's on the top a couple pages back. I definitely would check it out. And if I was on a computer right now, I'd flash the post, but unfortunately I can't. But yeah, with all that said, I think that Toxapex is something to look into, but I don't think it's something that you guys should be just like knee-jerk and react like, why not ban Toxapex? No, Stall is too good. And let me also address the Stall is too good people while I'm here. Stall isn't good in SSU, and it hasn't been good for almost the entirety of the generation. And I think a lot of people are confusing Stall with balance with things like Toxapex and Clefable that also have offensive Pokemon like Zeraora, Dragapult, you know, breakers like Magearna and Cinderace that previously existed that are now going to be replaced by things like Alakazam and Hydreigon and etc. And those balance teams, they can lead to stalemates in Toxapex, Clefable type of interactions, or, you know, with Hippowdon setting up Stealth Rocks on Corviknight a million times, etc. I get it, but that's balance. And I do think that there is an issue with balance teams potentially being a bit too dominant in the metagame right now. I actually agree with that, but misplacing that as Stall simply is incorrect. Stall teams are those teams with, you know, Clefable, Corviknight or Mandibuzz, Quagsire, Clefable, unaware Pokemon, you know, those type of teams that you see in the ladder. Those teams are really easy to beat in. I made a metagame Monday on how to break them, but if you guys have any questions on how to break them, let me know, and I can give you a million strategies on how to do that. It's really easy to integrate in your team building. I promise you, those teams are manageable right now. But balance is a bit more of a controversial hot topic in my eyes, and that's something we should discuss. And that's the root of why things like Toxapex and even Clefable, I've been warranting some tiering discussion for a while now, and I completely respect those views, and I think that we should discuss those things more. So again, post your thoughts on the forums. I'm really down to hear out any arguments. And again, I want to keep an open mind as possible here, because I think that doing so will allow us to find what's best for the metagame. And that might require banning or suspecting a defensive Pokemon in the future. I'm down for that. So we really need to crack down here and stop with the petty nonsense and name calling in the comments, and just, you know, focus on what's best for the tier. And I hope that you guys enjoyed this kind of honest perspective on what's going on, the impacts in the metagame, what might be a bit better, what might be a bit worse. I'm going to try and do a next metagame Monday on Cinderace. The issue is